Halloween night in the city was always chaotic. Streets flooded with kids in costumes, pumpkins flickering on every doorstep, music bouncing off the walls of apartment buildings. People were laughing, shouting, running, and eating candy like tomorrow would never come. But that night, Halloween became something else entirely. It started as a whisper on the news, a few reports of strange attacks in the city, people disappearing, screams echoing through alleyways, rumors of creatures attacking anyone in the streets. At first, no one took it seriously. It was Halloween. People assumed it was a prank, a viral stunt, something to scare the gullible. But then, the zombies came. They weren't the slow, shambling kind from old movies. These were fast, relentless, eyes wild, teeth gnashing. Aaliyah, Mark, and Clara saw them first in a deserted street near their neighborhood. At first, they thought it was a prank, a group of kids in masks. But the guttural growls and unnatural speed told them the truth. This was real. Aaliyah froze. "Mark, what the hell is that?" Mark's voice shook. I don't know. Run?" They tried to backtrack, but the street was already blocked by the creatures. A scream erupted behind them, and they turned to see a man being dragged down an alley, his hands clawing at the pavement, screaming. Panic clawed at their chests. Every instinct told them to run, but there was nowhere to go. The creatures moved closer, snapping at anyone in sight. Clara grabbed Aaliyah's arm. "We're done for. This is it, Aaliyah. Then something impossible happened. The zombies, teeth bared, eyes wild, moved past them. They snapped at people who had been hiding in doorways, lunged at a group of teenagers trying to escape. But not one of them glanced at Aaliyah, Mark, or Clara. They walked right past, as if invisible. Aaliyah's heart pounded. Wait, did you see that?" Mark's jaw dropped. They ain't even looking at us." For a moment there was disbelief, then creeping curiosity. Why not us?" Clara whispered. They looked around at the chaos, the screams, the bodies on the street. Fear still gripped them, but it was now mixed with confusion and a flicker of hope. Their survival didn't feel like luck. It felt like something bigger, something they didn't yet understand. That night, the city had flipped on its head. Those who had always been marginalized were now the only ones standing. By dawn, Aaliyah, Mark, and Clara were sitting on the steps of a burned-down community center, watching the chaos unfold. People were climbing fences, banging on doors, screaming for help. Some pleaded with them to let them into the safe areas. Some tried bargaining. Others just watched, trembling in fear. "Please," a man shouted, his voice cracking. "You gotta help us. We're dying out here." Aaliyah didn't answer. She didn't need to. She had seen how the world had treated them for years, ignored their voices, dismissed their pain. And now, fear had finally made some people see them. They started organizing, setting up safe zones, rationing food, helping those who were genuinely willing to work together, and keeping the zombies at bay. For the first time, Black communities were in control. The city was depending on them. And as they moved through the streets, Aaliyah noticed something striking. Even in desperation, some people's prejudice hadn't disappeared. Some tried to manipulate them, to exploit their immunity, to demand explanations or blood tests, to find a cure. "You really think this is funny?" asked one desperate scientist holding up a syringe. "We need to understand your immunity." Aaliyah's eyes narrowed. "You've been treating us like we don't matter for centuries," she said. "Now, you figure it out yourself." It didn't take long for her to understand. The zombies weren't supernatural. They were feeding on hate, on fear, on prejudice. The immunity wasn't about biology. It was a reflection of the world's hatred. Those who had always oppressed black people were the ones the monsters sought out. And those who had lived with resilience, compassion, and dignity were spared. Days turned into weeks. Black-led safe zones became the backbone of survival. People who were willing to learn and cooperate were welcomed. Those who refused were left outside to fend for themselves. Some learned humility. Some didn't. But the city had changed irrevocably. Halloween became a memory of horror and revelation. What had started as candy and costumes had ended in fear, survival, and truth. The dead had exposed the living, and the living had been forced to confront reality. Those who had been invisible were now indispensable. Those who had wielded power with cruelty had been humbled. Aaliyah walked through the streets with Mark and Clara at her side, shadows of zombies still roaming in the distance. The air smelled of smoke, decay, and the faint sweetness of pumpkin spice. And in that strange, eerie silence that followed chaos, she realized something. The scariest monsters weren't the ones with rotting flesh and hungry eyes. They had always been there, hiding in plain sight. The scariest monsters were the ones who refused to see their fellow human beings as equals. But then, something even stranger happened. As dawn stretched across the city, the zombies that had hunted the streets for weeks began slowing down. Their snarls softened. Their movements became uncoordinated, almost confused. And then, one by one, they stopped. At first, Aaliyah, Mark, and Clara thought it was a trick, a momentary lull. But soon, they noticed something even more unbelievable. The creatures, once terrifying, were transforming back into the people they had known, frightened, dirty, injured, but alive. Faces of neighbors, co-workers, classmates, even strangers who had been reported missing started emerging from the streets. ... The antidote, whatever force had caused it, had returned them to their real selves. People stumbled toward the safe zones, dazed, grateful, and trembling. The city was silent, save for the occasional cry of reunion, the shuffle of weary survivors helping one another up. And yet, the lesson remained clear. The world had almost fallen to its own hate, almost destroying itself, while ignoring the ones who had always carried resilience, wisdom, and courage. Now, with everyone returned to their true selves, the balance had shifted. Those who had been overlooked, underestimated, or oppressed were no longer invisible. Aaliyah walked through the streets with Mark and Clara at her side, watching families embrace, neighbors check on one another, and communities begin to rebuild. She felt the weight of what had happened, the heavy truth that society often only sees the value of people when survival depends on it. But for the first time, there was hope that maybe humanity could remember. Maybe not everyone had learned the lesson. Maybe not everyone would ever change, but enough had seen the truth to know that the old world was gone. And that night, the immune ones had shown the world what it really meant to survive. Halloween had started with candy and chaos, had turned into horror and fear, and now it ended with understanding and reconciliation. The dead had returned to life, and with them, the living had finally seen the light that had always been there. Aaliyah looked up at the sky as the first real sunbeam hit the city streets. She whispered almost to herself, "We survived, we endured, and maybe now they'll finally see us."